On today's crossover edition of Locked On Giants and Locked On Vikings, can the New York Giants start fast on offense? And what about the defense? Can they hold up against the Minnesota Vikings? We're going to cover all that and more on today's special crossover editions, Locked On Giants, Locked On Vikings, coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL, written in all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. Prize Picks, run your game. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first crossover edition, Crossover Thursday for Locked On Giants, Locked On Vikings. I'm Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media and your host for Locked On Giants, joined by my colleague, who is the host of the Locked On Vikings podcast, Luke Braun. Luke, good to see you, my friend.
Famously uncredentialed.
Uncredentialed, but still loved. You're still loved regardless.
Yes.
But anyway, we are here with the first crossover because finally NFL football is back this weekend. The Minnesota Vikings visit the New York Giants week 1. Maybe a little bit of a revenge match. We'll have to see. But on today's program.
Is it for who, though? Because I feel like winning that game tricked the Giants. Like, can we get that elephant out of the room right away? Ed Donatel is the greatest sleeper agent in Philadelphia Eagles history.
we could, but a little bit of a revenge game. I'm sure that the Vikings going to want to get even with the Giants for that playoff list. But who knows? Maybe the Giants will want to get even with the Vikings for stealing JJ McCarthy. But who knows? But anyway, on today's program, we're going to take a look at the Minnesota Vikings in segment 1. We'll take a look at the key storylines, the biggest, the key, what we need to know on offense and defense. And then we're going to flip it in segment 2. We'll talk about the Giants. And then in segment 3, we'll talk about keys to victory. So a lot to get to. And Luke, since the Vikings are the visiting team, let's start off with the offense. Tell us about the challenges, the big stories that we should be paying attention to regarding the Vikings offense.
It's been something of an off season for the Minnesota Vikings. So here's where we've been, right? We signed Sam Darnold. He was brought in to be the bridge, right? To start 6 or 7 games while the rookie gets ready. And then when the rookie's ready, he's in. Whoever that rookie was going to be ends up being JJ McCarthy. Famously, the Giants passing on JJ McCarthy. So here, like, McCarthy was never going to start week 1. That they always had a plan for him that like they were very comfortable being patient and not forcing that. And it's like, man, like, look, if he shows up and he's absolutely gangbusters, then sure. And he was starting to make that argument, but it still felt a little bit like, we've got a long way to go. Why rush it? Then he has his knee injury, has knee surgery, out for the year. So that's over now. It's just a Sam Darnold year. And now injuries abound. Jordan Addison, currently, he gets carted off the field during joint practices with the Browns. He is still basically doing warmups and going back inside. Jalen Naylor is supposed to be their wide receiver 3. Now he's off the field. And we have to see how that injury report plays out over the week. By the time listeners hear this, we might have more information about those situations. So look at the injury reports. But as we are recording this, not sure what's going to happen there. TJ Hockenson, he's on PUP. He won't be back till at least week 5. So all of the pass catchers that they have to take the pressure, to take the attention away from Justin Jefferson, or to punish defenses that give Justin Jefferson too much attention, are out. The next, like, most prolific pass catcher is going to be like Brandon Powell or Johnny Munt at tight end. I mean, it is truly right now Justin Jefferson and like whoever's. If Addison plays, if Naylor plays, I'll start to feel a lot better about that because Naylor had a gangbusters camp. Jordan Addison, we feel great about him, especially taking the top off the defense. But if neither of those guys are available, it's definitely going to be the Justin Jefferson show. And to a point where I think the Giants would be naive to ever leave him one-on-one. Make somebody else beat you. I think that might be, and make Sam Darnold beat you, who knows what we're going to see from him. He's had a great camp. He's played a lot more responsible football than he has in the past. He's a little bit of a grown-up Sam Darnold, more mature Sam Darnold, but he's still Sam Darnold, and we haven't seen, we've only heard about this in theory. We haven't really seen it in action yet, so it'll be kind of a proving ground.
All right, sounds good. I mean, sounds like they're banged up really good at receiver. But Luke, what about the defense? I mean, you guys lost Danielle Hunter in the offseason. I mean, just kind of a big loss, I think, for the defense. But what should we be looking for from the Minnesota defense?
It's going to be a blitz fest, probably on both sides of the ball. With Brian Flores, they replaced Hunter. They tried to kind of replace him in the aggregate, to quote the Moneyball movie. They got Jonathan Grenard, who was the premier pass rusher on the Texans last year. He was their big free agent signing was Grenard. And they have Andrew Van Ginkel, who's also like a dyed-in-the-wool Flores guy. And then they draft Dallas Turner in the first round, in addition to McCarthy. He has had a fantastic camp, fantastic preseason. They shut him down for the last preseason game. He had proven what he needed to prove. So you're going to have this kind of rotation of 3 edge rushers, guys lining up over guards on third down, blitzes, weird stuff, and then all the same kind of secondary stuff they had. But the secondary is really the issue. At safety, they're really excited. They've got Josh Metellus. They love him. Of course, Harrison Smith is Harrison Smith. Cam Bynum, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get an in-season extension, if not one coming down the horizon soon. But at corner, they have 34-year-old Stephon Gilmore. They have whatever's left of Shaq Griffin. Byron Murphy, they feel pretty good about him, but there's a lot of question marks all over the secondary, not to mention the depth. They have experience. They had Mekhi Blackman, who tore his ACL. Of course, their 4th-round rookie, Kyrie Jackson, he passed away in a car accident this offseason. The corner room is decimated. And so they had to kind of patch it together with a bunch of old guys. So it's like it makes them one of the oldest teams in the league this year, just because they're having to sign the guys that, the old guys are the ones that sign in August, so they don't have to do most of camp,
Yeah, I know the feeling. So Luke, how, overall, what are you most concerned with, the offense or the defense at this point?
Most concerned, definitely the defense, but everything has its question marks. Like, here's the thing about this matchup, right? This is a week 1 game without playoff implications. Like, there's always a couple of those where you got 2 teams that look like they're gonna finish last in their own divisions, right? Hey, everybody's 0-0. Go prove them wrong. Love it. But that's the projection right now. And I think whichever team can kind of figure out its problems is the one that's going to have more success in this game. It's a very like an internal game. It's not about, can I answer your questions? It's about, can I answer my own? So, I don't know. I don't know where the Vikings are going to be. There are so many question marks going into this one. And after this game and then week 2, they play the 49ers at home. I think after those 2 games, we'll get a sense for really what was just kind of blowing smoke and what was actually a problem, what was actually good, things are going to feel a little more real after those couple weeks, but it's tough because everything's like theory right now.
Yeah. All right. Don't go anywhere, Vikings fans and Giants fans, because right after this, I'm going to talk to you about the New York Giants. We'll be right back. All right, football fans, did you know that Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members? Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Hey, everybody, the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman, Tyler Rowland, kicks off your morning with a double shot of an NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop for a visit with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all of that in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the new Locked On NFL your second listen on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in, Vikings fans, Giants fans, to this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Vikings and Locked On Giants. Luke Braun here with Patricia Traina. So tell me about the Giants now. This has been a weird offseason in a large part because you guys got a look in, an exclusive look in, courtesy of HBO, of a lot of the really tough decisions, whether or not to move forward to Daniel Jones, what to do with Saquon Barkley, and Joe Shane talking through all of that stuff. So I guess, how did Giants fans feel about how all of that played out?
I think you got a lot of people who are hopeful. I think that's the best word. I mean, look, the Giants, most of the last decade plus, not a very good football team. A lot of make or break type seasons coming up for members of this team, including head coach Brian Dable, who if things just fall apart, I would not be surprised if ownership starts to reevaluate where things are at. But on offense, the biggest storyline, obviously, there's actually two: Daniel Jones and Malik Nabers. The Giants, as you just mentioned, they lost Saquon Barkley in free agency. So now the offense is going to flow through the passing game. And the Giants receivers is probably the strength of the team right now, led by that rookie Malik Nabers, who, yes, folks, he has come as advertised. I mean, he's just amazing. The question becomes, though, can Daniel Jones get back to being the player that he was in 2022 when he famously led the team to a 9-7-1 record and a playoff berth, including a win over the Vikings? Or is he the same guy that we saw last year prior to his ACL injury, who looked skittish, who was making stupid rookie-like decisions? What are we going to get from Daniel Jones? And here's the other thing. The Giants not having Saquon Barkley to bail Daniel Jones out, so now the onus is on him. But more importantly, let's talk about the offensive line, because that has been a problem for the Giants.
That's the question. Yeah, like Evan Neal against some of these new edge rushers the Vikings have.
Well, we won't see
How's that
Evan
going to
Neal.
work?
Yeah, we won't see Evan Neal, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Evan Neal,
is he hurt?
No, he basically he was on PUP to start training camp because he had a setback in the spring. And, Jermaine Illuminor took over that role. And unless he's hurt, Evan Neal's not starting. I would be absolutely shocked if the coach.
Okay, so that sounds like benched with an excuse.
Well, you can call it what you want, but
okay,
Jermaine Illuminor is going to be the right tackle unless something really funky happens between now and Sunday. But that being said, the offensive line, the Giants did something different, if you will, with this offensive line. They went the veteran route. All right, so they brought in Jermaine Illuminor and Greg Van Roten, both of whom played on the right side, I believe, last year for the Raiders, whose offensive line coach, by the way, Carmen Brasillo, is now the Giants offensive line coach. And then on the left side, you've got Andrew Thomas, who, of course, is a stalwart over there. And they brought in John Runyon Jr. from the Green Bay Packers, who I'm sure you're familiar with, facing them a couple times a year. He's going to be the left guard. At center, they have second-year man John Michael Schmitz. He's probably the one I would have the biggest question mark about, only because of the
former Gopher, right?
What's that?
Former Gopher, I believe.
Yeah, John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah, his durability has been an issue this summer. So, overall, though, you watch the offensive line this past summer, the starting offensive line. There's reason to be optimistic that they are going to hold up and they're going to give Daniel Jones the protection that he needs. Now, we'll have to see about the running game because you've got Devin Singletary in there instead of Saquon. I think the running game will be fine. But really, if you had to pick one area where I think everything hinges on Daniel Jones, who is coming off the ACL. Can he be the guy he was in 2022? They actually need them to be that and better if they want to go places.
So what I remember about the 2022 Giants, there was a lot of scrappy, right? There were a lot of close games and stuff. But also it was because it was a Saquon Barkley offense, it was a very quick timing offense. It was, short, get the ball to your playmakers and let them do stuff in space. Malik Nabers is different. Malik Nabers is a downfield guy. So how do we feel about Daniel Jones throwing to like a primarily deep receiver, or will it be a whole bunch of tunnel screens and Malik Nabers doing yak stuff and all that? Like, how are the Giants looking like they're going to try to use this kid?
Yeah, I think they're going to mix things up. Actually, you're going to see timing patterns. I mean, we saw a lot of them early on, and I don't know, those of you who followed my coverage, I was talking about how Daniel Jones was overshooting guys or under, shooting them or whatever. So the timing was a little bit off, but they're going to take their shots down the field when they are there. Now, if you're expecting them to throw deep to Malik Nabers on every pass, no, that's not going to happen. The Giants, if you look at how the rest of their receiving core is built, they've got Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a quick, shifty little runner / receiver out of the backfield. He can pick up yards after the catch. You've got Jalen Hyatt, who can also pick up yards after the catch as well as go deep downfield. And then let's not forget about Darius Slayton, who's the oldest guy of the group. He can take the top off of a defense. So they've got a mixture. They like to call their receiver group like a basketball team, where you have a mixture of different types and athletes who can do different things. That's what the Giants have, and that's why the receiver group right now is probably the strength of the Giants offense.
This is going to be so interesting because I think a lot of the strengths of both of these teams attack the weaknesses of the other team. So again, it's going to come down to, who can overcome their own problems and sort of neutralize that effect. But I haven't asked about the defense at all. So defensively, we don't need to go over the roster player by player or anything like that. But do you still expect it to be blitz heavy Giants? It's still Wink Martindale, right? Do you expect it to? Oh, it's not. Okay. Oh, right. He retired. Shane Bowen. Okay. So what do we expect out of this defense then? In particular, coverage wise, when they've got one very serious threat to deal with and then kind of nothing else.
Yeah, it's interesting. The strength of the Giants defense is their front seven, and Shane Bowen's philosophy is like the polar opposite of what Wink Martindale ran. Whereas Wink Martindale lived and died by the blitz, Bowen will blitz, but you're not going to see fancy stuff coming in from the defensive secondary. You're not going to see a blitz on 40+% of the snaps or the dropbacks. You're going to see them try to get home with the front seven. And of course, the addition of Brian Burns, the hope is that he will give them or create a pick your poison type of scenario along with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence up front on the defensive line. The real problem for the Giants right now, the question mark, is the defensive secondary. Now, all summer long, I screamed about how I was concerned about cornerback 2. They didn't, they had Nick McLeod, they had Cordell Flott competing for cornerback 2. Neither of them really took the job. So actually last Friday, the Giants brought back an old friend, Adoree Jackson. The question now becomes, is Adoree going to be ready for Sunday's game? Because obviously there's being in shape and there's being in football shape. So is Adoree going to be ready? That we don't know. We'll have to see how the game goes through. But, you mentioned it before. Justin Jefferson, he's going to get a lot of attention from the Giants. I suspect he's going to be doubled every turn. And it's going to be up to the Vikings receivers, the other receiving targets, to kind of beat their guys one-on-one. But that's the matchup that I'm most concerned about.
It's going to be very fascinating to watch these teams try to deal with like really big tests at all of their points of weakness. We'll go over next here what each of these teams has to do to bring home the W.
Hey, football fans. So when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open to the perfect role. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. And did you know that LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier? They've just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Find out why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to this special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Vikings, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. And in this segment, Luke Braun, host of Locked On Vikings, and myself, Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants, we're going to give you our keys to victory for our respective teams. And Luke, since the Vikings are the visitors, you go first. What are the keys, the 3 keys the Vikings have to accomplish if they're to emerge with a win?
I think the best way to do it is to make Daniel Jones fall apart. As you have alluded to in camp, if you can get him rattled, and they're going to send the world at him all the time, right? So if you can get him rattled enough to either totally shrink down into a 2 yards a pop kind of, check downs only offense, or force, run through his patience and get him to start forcing the issue and making mistakes, I think that's the best way to do this. Generate turnovers, generate chaos. Keep them from that Malik Nabers go ball down the sideline against a corner that, hasn't been good in 3 years. Keep that out of there by getting so much pressure on them that they can't throw a 30-yard pass because they don't have time to wait for it to develop. They can't do deep downfield concepts that are going to attack some of the zone coverages they'll see there. That pressure is going to be everything. And if they're going to win, that means they're going to have to immediately get the defensive line. It's optimistic because they did quite a lot. They spent a first-round pick. They spent the most money on D-line in free agency versus any other position. They went hard at their D-line, but we have to see proof of concept now. And if the Giants O-line is a question mark, then it's like, okay, if you can't get pressure on these guys, then we got a big problem. If that's going to be the mismatch. So they have to take so much advantage of the mismatch that's in their favor that the Giants can't take advantage of the mismatches that aren't in their favor. That's got to be the key. But what do you think? I that's only on one side of the ball, of course. How are the Giants going to approach this game as underdogs at home, by the way, which I think is interesting. This might be one of the only games all year that the Vikings are favored, and I honestly didn't even expect them to be. So how will the Giants approach this game in a way that gives them the best chance to win?
Well, I think obviously they're going to want to get pressure on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold typically, like most quarterbacks, doesn't respond well to pressure. Last year, I believe he was when he was under pressure, I think he completed 50% of his pass attempts.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned,
in the one game he played, I think that probably
something
makes
like
sense.
that. So like I mentioned in the previous segment, if they can get home with the front 7 and not have to do these fancy blitzes and crazy things that Wink Martindale used to do, that's going to be key because Darnold is mistake prone. So that's probably number 1. Number 2, obviously, take care of Justin Jefferson. Get him to where you're not going to necessarily stop him, but if you can neutralize him to where he doesn't have, fantasy football type numbers on you, that's going to be absolutely key, I think, for the Giants. And as I mentioned in the last segment, that defensive secondary worries me. Even with the addition of Adoree Jackson, who we don't know if he's going to be ready to play 60 snaps plus, that defensive secondary, until I see a better showing. And I saw them against the Jets in the joint practice and against the Jets also in the preseason game. And I'm still squeamish about it. I'm not going to lie. And then, of course, the other side of the ball for the Giants, Daniel Jones, he's got to play a clean game. The Giants are I think, winless since 2022 when they have turned the ball over more than 2 times. So they've got to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. The Giants, it's interesting. Last year, they could not get off to a fast start if their lives depended on it. They were like minus 100 by the time, halftime came
Really?
around. So, they were being outscored. So they
Yeah.
got to get off to a fast start. They can't leave points on the board. They can't leave yards on the field. Play a clean, efficient game. Now different this year. Brian Dable is going to be calling the plays for the Giants. So we'll see. He's a little bit, no disrespect to Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator and the play caller the last 2 years, but Brian Dable's a little bit more creative. That's one of the reasons why the Giants hired him. So we'll see how he mixes it up. And of course, Dable leans heavily, at least based on what he did in Buffalo, more of a fan of the pass than the run game. The run game gets sprinkled in, but the passing game is going to really be the key.
Yeah, it's more Billsy Brian Dable instead of, okay, our best players are running back. We have to design things around that. Okay, there's two things that I think we should touch on that we haven't yet. The first, this is very important. I said it last time I was on your show. The Century Red uniforms are great. I'm glad that I get to watch them. Everybody else is wrong. They rock. And especially with the red logo in the middle of the field, that's going to work really well. That aesthetic is very sick. The Giants should be very happy with it. I say this without a shred of sarcasm or irony. I think it is really great looking. I love the vintage throwback stuff. I love it. So I'm actually excited for the aesthetic of this game. Serious point though. We haven't talked about Dexter Lawrence yet, and the problems that he caused the last time the Vikings met the Giants, which was in the playoffs. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball was so bad, a dude got fired, and arguably the Giants completely overestimated their offense and committed to Daniel Jones. So that was an issue. But on the Vikings offensive side of the ball, maybe the difference that prevented them from being able to keep up with all the scoring the Giants were doing was Dexter Lawrence absolutely smoking the interior. That's Bradbury, that's Ingram. The only change since that game that the Vikings have made to their entire offensive line has been at left guard. And that's a guy named Blake Brandel, who has been a backup the whole time, who's getting a basically uncontested starting role. Everybody's really raising an eyebrow on it, but the Vikings swear by it. They say he's got this. They even signed Dalton Reisner, who they kind of brought in to be a de facto Ezra Cleveland replacement. They traded Cleveland to the Jaguars, and now Reisner's hurt, but it did not appear like he was going to be competing really seriously for that job anyways. He was given very much a backup contract. So Blake Brandel, starting left guard, and the other two guys that Dexter Lawrence absolutely made mincemeat of last time. So if you're looking for a way to get pressure up the interior there with Dexter Lawrence, he might be the key of keys on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is coming off a second straight Pro Bowl. He was a second team All-Pro. Best player they have on defense. No,
arguably the best player at that position now that Aaron Donald's out. I think you can make that argument because so many nose tackles don't do anything in pass rush.
Yeah.
In pass rush. And Dexter Lawrence, not only does he do stuff in pass rush, sometimes he's the focal point of the pass rush. That's so weird. Offenses aren't used to that.
I know. I'm not used to seeing that either.
Yeah.
It's actually quite nice to see, actually.
Yeah.
All right. So, Luke, before we say goodbye to everybody, I'm not going to ask you for a score, but who wins the game Sunday?
I guess I'll go with the Vikings because they're favored, but I genuinely have no earthly idea. There are so many variables and question marks. There's, hey, both of us feel pretty bad about our secondary, but we're not sure. Both of us feel weird about our QBs, but we're not sure. We're weird about the O-lines, but we're not sure. Everything, we have a vibe, but what's real and what isn't is going to come out. But I do think that by the end of the first quarter, we'll get a sense for exactly what's real and what isn't, and we'll have a much easier time kind of gathering the vibe of the game, pretty early.
All right. I'm going to just come right out and say it and call me a homer if you have to. I think the Giants win this one.
Sure.
I mean, if they don't, like I said, they've got to get off to a strong start for this season. But, I think if you look through the matchups, you look through, who has the competitive edge, I think the Giants, that defensive front, hands down, I think they have the edge over the offensive line of the Vikings. I mentioned my concerns with the defensive secondary. If that defensive front can get the job done, it could be a fun afternoon. Then it's just a matter of, can Daniel Jones in the passing game click and do what they need to do? Can they open up holes for the running game and make for a balanced offense? But I'm going to go with the Giants. Why not,
Hey,
right?
can't hold that against you. We'll
Yeah,
we'll see what happens. It's going to be a weird one. I'm glad this one's not on prime time. Everybody, please look away from this game. I do not think this is going to be the prettiest football that we see out of these teams this decade.
Well, unlike you, I'm not a fan of the red look, but it is what it is. I totally
see, now
forgot
that I could
about
get
that
in.
until you mentioned it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They're one of those uniforms.
Yeah,
But
they got
it'll
the
be
throwback logo
weird.
and everything, harking back to pre-war days.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it'll be
It's lovely.
weird for sure. But hey, listen, football is back. We're excited here on the Locked On NFL Network. Make sure you're following Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings, myself, Locked On Giants, and all of our Locked On programming. Not just NFL, we have MLB, we got hockey, we've got basketball, we got college, we've got so much here. So do check us out. We appreciate you tuning in. And folks, make sure you keep it here for Friday. We'll have all new shows here for you on Locked On Giants and Locked On Vikings. For Luke Braun, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And don't forget to check out Locked On NFL for your second listen of the day with Tyler Rowland and the amazing Tony Wiggins. You will not be sorry. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you soon.